The very first time Kang Taijun realizes the woman in his bed isn't his wife, the drama doesn't play it like a cheap gag. It plays it like a threat. There's this split second where his hand freezes on her wrist, his wedding ring catches the bedside lamp, and you can almost hear the air change in the room, like oxygen got expensive. He doesn't yell. He doesn't even flinch. He just looks at her the way a man looks at a document he's about to shred, and he says, quietly, "Who are you?" And Seolha, still wearing her sister's perfume like a lie, tries to answer, but her throat won't cooperate. That's the moment wrong sister in his bed tells you what it is. Not just a scandalous twin swap romance, but a survival story dressed up in silk sheets. Welcome back to Flick Flare. And yes, I watched all of this 2026 chaos with my full chest. If you like these long, deep dive reviews, consider subscribing. Soft request, no pressure. You can always leave me later like half the men in this drama. And because the spoiler level is full, I'm not going to tiptoe. I'm cracking this thing open, twists and all. Because honestly, the show itself doesn't tiptoe either. It shoves you down the stairs in heels and asks if you learned anything on the way. What makes this drama instantly addictive is the way it weaponizes familiarity. Twins, switching places, rich husband, broken marriage. Sure, you think you've got it. But the writing keeps tightening the screws by making the swap feel less like an escapist fantasy and more like a slow, deliberate drowning. Seolha isn't swapping lives because she wants to taste luxury. She swaps because she's cornered. She's a struggling nurse at Hanyul University Hospital, drowning in bills from her mom's long-term dialysis and the kind of debt collectors who don't even bother pretending to be polite anymore. Meanwhile, her twin, Yoo Eson, is a socialite with a face the media loves and a soul that treats other people like disposable gloves. Esoyeon calls Seolha late at night, crying, shaking, telling her she's in trouble, that she needs her just for a week. And Seolha, who has spent her whole life being the twin that cleans up the mess, says yes. Here's the first rehook. You think she's saying yes to wealth. She's actually saying yes to a plan designed for her not to come back. The genius of episode 1 is how it crosscuts Seolha's hospital life with Esoyeon's penthouse life, like they're two different genres. Seolha's world is fluorescent lights, squeaky shoes, the beep-beep of monitors that never stop. Esoyeon's world is champagne bubbles and camera shutters and marble that looks like it's never been touched by stress. The cinematography is loud about it. Seolha's scenes lean green-blue, slightly underexposed, handheld enough that you feel the fatigue in your wrists. Esoyeon's scenes are glossy, stable, overlit, like a brand campaign. And when Seolha finally walks into Esoyeon's closet to start the swap, the camera lingers on the fabrics the way other dramas linger on weapons. Because here, that's what they are. A dress is a disguise. A heel is a shackle. Let's talk about Seolha as a lead, because the performance is the spine of this entire ride. The actress plays her with this contained softness that never tips into weakness. Seolha is compassionate. Yes, she's a nurse. She's trained to absorb other people's pain. But she's also observant in a way the rich characters aren't. She notices everything because she's had to. There's a moment when she's practicing Esoyeon's signature smile in the mirror, and it's almost funny until it isn't. Her face keeps slipping back into sincerity, like her muscles don't know how to lie for that long. And when she finally gets it right, she looks proud for half a second, then ashamed. That tiny beat told me the actor understood the real tragedy. Seolha isn't just pretending to be her sister. She's rehearsing what it might feel like to be treated like she matters. Then we meet Taijun properly. And I need you to understand, wrong sister in his bed does not do cold billionaire as a flat trope. Kang Taijun is cold. Yes, but not because the writers want him edgy. He's cold because his entire life is a hostage situation. He's the CEO of Hanyul Group, married to Eson in what everyone calls a power match. But it's clearly an arrangement that's rotting from the inside. His mother, Chairwoman Kang Hayang, is one of those elegantly terrifying matriarchs who never raises her voice because she never has to. Taijun walks through his own house like a guest. His marriage bed feels like a boardroom. Even the production design agrees. That mansion is beautiful in the way a museum is beautiful. High ceilings, empty spaces, everything echoing. The sound design loves those echoes. Footsteps in that house land like punctuation. And when Seolha enters that house as Eson, the show makes it feel like she's walking into a trap that's already been set for years. Here's where the title earns its teeth. The drama doesn't drag out the "he can't tell the twins apart" thing. Taijun knows. Not immediately in the first second, but quickly, viscerally. Eson's scent is wrong, her posture is wrong, her eyes don't have that practiced cruelty. There's a scene where he pours wine, watches her hands, and you can see the moment he clocks it. Her fingers have tiny calluses from latex gloves and syringe caps, not manicures and champagne flutes. So when he confronts her in the bedroom, low voice, slow steps, that predator patience, Seolha panics and does what she's trained to do. She tries to de-escalate. She speaks softly. She uses empathy, which, in Taijun's world, reads like manipulation. And the show makes you sit in that misunderstanding until it burns. The first half of the drama is basically Seolha trying to keep her head above water while everyone around her assumes she's a shark. Chairwoman Kang treats Esoyeon like a defective product. The staff watches her like she's going to steal silverware. Taijun watches her like she's a spy. And the real Esoyeon? She's off screen just enough to feel like a god moving pieces. She texts Seolha instructions like she's controlling a puppet. What to wear, what to say, when to smile. The editing helps sell the paranoia. Quick cuts to Eson's typing, Seolha's phone lighting up like a warning, Taijun's eyes flicking to that screen. Even the vibration sound becomes stressful after a while. I started flinching every time her phone buzzed. That's good TV. Also mildly unhealthy, but we'll circle back. Now let's get to the emotional core that made me go, oh, they're not playing. Seolha discovers, pretty early, that Taijun is the man she once saved. Years ago, before he was a headline and a husband and a prisoner to his own surname, he was just June, bleeding out after a highway pileup, half conscious in an ambulance bay while everyone else panicked. Seolha was a trainee then, still learning where to put her hands, still shaking when she spoke to doctors. And she kept him alive anyway. The drama revisits that memory in these warm, golden fragments, different color grading, softer focus, almost like the past is the only place with sunlight. In the flashback, June opens his eyes just enough to see her face and grab her wrist. He can't speak, but his grip says, please. And she tells him, don't you dare die on me. I don't have time for your drama. It's the one time the show lets itself breathe in humor, and it makes the later pain hit harder. Here's the rehook. Seolha thinks she's re-entering his life as a mistake. Taijun has been haunted by her for years, and Esoyeon used that haunting as a ladder. Because, yes, Esoyeon didn't just end up married to Taijun. She stole the love that was meant to be Seolha's. And the show doesn't reveal that as a vague implication. It gives you receipts. Esoyeon found the old hospital ID photo in Seolha's drawer. She tracked down June through the accident case files. She showed up at a charity event wearing Seolha's old hair clip, the one June remembered. Then let him believe fate was handing him his savior. It's disgusting. It's also, unknowingly, brilliant. And that's what makes Esoyeon such a good villain. She's not chaotic evil. She's strategic evil. She's the kind of person who would weaponize destiny and call it romance. And when Seolha, now in Esoyeon's place, starts seeing how deep the deception goes, you can watch her moral world crack in real time. One of my favorite sequences is the gala episode, because it's where the drama stops being just tense and starts being operatic. Seolha has to attend a Hanyul Foundation event as on, in this silver backless gown that looks like moonlight but feels like armor. The styling is insane. Hair pinned too tight, Diamond earrings that feel like handcuffs, lipstick that looks like a warning sign. Taijun walks in with her, hand on the small of her back, and the way the camera frames them is so intentional. Two beautiful people in a wide shot, surrounded by money, with a visible inch of space between their bodies that might as well be a wall. A reporter asks Esuon about the rumors of a marriage crisis, and Seolha does this thing where she smiles like Esuon, but her eyes flick to Taijun like Seolha. And Taijun catches it. He doesn't save her verbally. He saves her with presence. He steps closer, just enough, and says, "My wife doesn't answer questions from people who can't even spell her name." The line is sharp, and the crowd laughs, and Seolha laughs too. But her laugh is late. It's the laugh of someone realizing she just felt safe for a second, because of the man who might destroy her. And then, because this drama loves whiplash, Esuon sends a text right then, "Go to the balcony." Now, the balcony scene is where I fully locked in. Night wind, city lights glittering like they're mocking her, music from inside muffled like she's underwater. Seolha steps out, and the camera follows behind her shoulder, slightly shaky, like we're walking into danger with her. A man is waiting, Sean's fixer, director Ma Jin-cheol, the kind of corporate leech who always looks damp. He hands her an envelope and says, "Sign the transfer. The accounts need to move tonight." Seolha opens it and realizes it's a document authorizing a massive fund shift from the foundation to a shell company. Illegal. Traceable. A perfect crime. If you need a scapegoat. Seolha refuses. Jin-cheol smiles and says, "Then your mother's dialysis ends this week." And the soundtrack does this low, almost sub-bass pulse that feels like a heartbeat turning into a countdown. Here's the uncomfortable contrarian take I didn't expect to have. Taijun isn't the most dangerous man in this story. The most dangerous people are the ones who know exactly what you love and how much it costs. Seolha signs, and you hate that she signs, but you also understand it in your bones. The writing doesn't frame it as stupidity. It frames it as caution. And that's where wrong sister in his bed gets under your skin. It keeps asking, what would you do, really, if survival came with paperwork? From there, the plot starts stacking pressure like it's trying to crush a diamond out of Seolha. Taijun launches an internal audit because money is missing. Chairwoman Kang tightens her grip, using the audit as an excuse to isolate Esoyeon from allies. Esoyeon keeps feeding Seolha lines to say, and Seolha keeps getting caught in tiny inconsistencies. How she holds chopsticks, how she greets staff, how she doesn't know the names of people she's supposedly insulted for years. The director uses these micro-mistakes like landmines. You'll get a quiet breakfast scene when nothing happens. But the tension is unbearable because Taijun watches her butter toast like he's interrogating her. And the actor playing Taijun deserves credit here. He doesn't do melodramatic suspicion. He does controlled observation. His eyes are always working, always measuring. When he's angry, he gets quieter. When he's hurt, he gets colder. It's not flashy. It's unsettling. There's also the stepdaughter, Kang Hanyul. Yes, they did that name thing on purpose. And no, I didn't stop noticing it. Hanyul is Taijun's daughter from his late first love, and she's the emotional lie detector of the household. She's a teenager with headphones permanently on, allergic to everyone's performance. She hates Esoyeon. Openly. Brutally. But when Seolha starts living there, Hanyul notices the difference immediately. Because Seolha refills her water without being asked, because Seolha doesn't flinch at her sarcasm, because Seolha treats her like a person instead of a prop. Their relationship becomes this unexpected thread of warmth running through a very cold palace. And the show shoots their scenes with softer lighting, fewer wide shots, more medium close-ups. Less wealth, more home. Here's the rehook. Hanyul is the first person in that mansion who starts to love Seolha. And that love becomes the reason Esoyeon decides Seolha has to die. The "never meant to survive trading places" line from the premise isn't metaphor. It's literal. Seo-yeon's plan is to push all the illegal transfers, the affair evidence, the attempted murder suspicions onto Seo-yeon, meaning Seol-ha wearing Seo-yeon's face. Then she'll vanish, return later with a new identity, and let the system crush her sister in her place. And the drama slowly shows you how far back this goes. Their childhood flashbacks aren't sweet. They're bleak. Seo-yeon was always the twin who took. Seol-ha was always the twin who gave. Their father died early, their mother's health collapsed, and Seo-yeon learned the world rewards pretty lies faster than honest work. Seol-ha learned that if she didn't become useful, she'd become disposable. There's a scene that honestly made me pause the episode and just sit there. Seol-ha in the hospital supply room, back in her old scrubs for a night shift because she's sneaking out of the mansion like a criminal just to keep her nursing job. She's changing in a cramped space and she catches her reflection. Half her face still has gala makeup, the other half is bare under harsh fluorescent light. Two identities split down the middle. She starts wiping the lipstick off with a trembling hand, and the makeup smears like bruising. No dialogue. Just the sound of a vending machine humming outside the door. And then her phone buzzes, Seo-yeon again. The camera pushes in so tight, you can see the pores on her skin, and you realize the show is basically filming a panic attack like it's a thriller. I'm going to admit something a little personal here. I don't usually get physically tense from rich people problems dramas. I can enjoy them, sure, but I'm not clenched. This one had me clenched. The caution hits too close to real life. That constant feeling of being watched, of one wrong move ruining someone you love, yeah. There were moments I had to take a breath, like I was the one hiding in that mansion. And because the drama is mean in the best way, it gives Seol-ha a moment of hope right before it sharpens the knife. That hope is Tae-jun remembering her. It happens during an emergency at the Foundation's rehab center, one of those PR facilities built to look charitable but run like a corporate organ farm. A patient collapses during a photopy. Staff freeze because cameras are rolling. Seol-ha runs in without thinking, drops to her knees, and starts CPR, counting under her breath with the steady rhythm nurses use when they're trying not to cry. Tae-jun watches, and something in him breaks through the ice. The counting triggers the memory. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the same cadence from the night she saved him years ago. The show overlays the sound, present counting with past counting, until it becomes this airy duet. Tae-jun steps closer, his face changing in real time. And when the patient coughs back to life, Seol-ha exhales like she's been holding her breath for a decade. Tae-jun grabs her wrist afterward, same grip as the flashback. And for a second it feels like fate finally aligns. He whispers, "It was you." And then the very next scene, Seo-yeon detonates that hope with a single video. She sends Tae-jun surveillance footage of Seo-yeon meeting with director Ma Jin-cheol on the balcony, signing the transfer. No context, no caution, just a clean image of betrayal. Tae-jun's face goes blank in that terrifying way some people's faces go blank right before they do something permanent. He doesn't confront her immediately. He invites her to dinner. He pours her wine. He asks her about her day like they're normal. And the editing is sick because it cuts between his calm politeness and his hand tightening on the glass until you can hear the crystal complain. Here's the rehook. Tae-jun doesn't expose Seol-ha yet because he's not sure if she's the enemy or the only honest thing he's ever had in that house. So instead, he tests her. He locks her into a psychological maze. He brings up details from the accident night, little things only his savior would know. He mentions the cheap strawberry candy the paramedics gave him to keep him conscious. Seol-ha reacts before she can stop herself. Tae-jun sees it. His eyes soften for half a second, then harden again because softness, in his world, is a liability. And that's the push-pull of their dynamic. Recognition battling betrayal, tenderness fighting survival. The romance in this drama is not cute. It's not fluffy. It's two traumatized people circling each other in a room full of knives, occasionally touching palms like they're checking if they're still human. But the show also refuses to let Taijun off the hook, which I respected. Because if you squint, you could easily paint him as the misunderstood hero. The script doesn't do that. Taijun has power. He uses it, sometimes cruelly. When he suspects Seolha, he isolates her, cuts off her access to her mother's hospital, threatens to expose Soyeon to the prosecutors. He tells her, "You don't get to be afraid in my house." And I remember thinking, oh wow, sir, you should hear yourself. That line is monstrous. And the drama frames it as monstrous. The camera doesn't romanticize him when he says it. It pulls back, makes him look larger than her, makes the room feel like it's swallowing her. And then, because he's still human, he later hears Seolha crying on the phone with the dialysis center, begging them to give her one more week, one more session. And you see the cost of his cruelty land on him like nausea. There's a side character who becomes crucial here. Prosecutor Lee Jun-seok, Seolha's old friend from nursing school's volunteer program. Someone who once had a quiet crush on her and never got over it. The drama uses Jun-seok as a moral mirror. He's not perfect, he's ambitious. And he likes the idea of being the one to save Seolha. But he's also the only person outside the mansion who sees her panic and believes it without needing proof. When he says, "Tell me what you're hiding, and I'll hide it with you," it's romantic in a way that's also kind of dangerous. Because secrecy becomes intimacy. And intimacy becomes leverage. Also, small human aside, every time Jun-seok showed up in that perfectly pressed coat, like he just stepped out of a men's skincare ad, I kept thinking, Sir, do you prosecute corruption or do you moisturize it? The casting team knew exactly what they were doing. Jun-seok starts investigating the foundation transfers, which forces Soyeon to accelerate her plan. And this is where the drama becomes outright murderous. Eun doesn't just want Seolha blamed. She wants Seolha gone. Permanently. The first attempt is staged as an accident. Seolha's car brakes fail on a coastal road after a tense meeting with Taijun. The scene is shot like a nightmare. Headlights sweeping over wet asphalt. The ocean black as ink. The sound dropping out except for Seolha's breathing and the faint tick-tick of a warning light. She tries the brakes. Nothing. Her hands shake on the wheel. She swerves, clips the guardrail, and the car spins. The camera stays inside the car with her, which is such a good choice because you don't get the relief of distance. You feel trapped with her. Glass cracks. Metal screams. And right before impact, Seolha's mind flashes. Not to Taijun, not to money, but to her mother's hands, thin and warm, holding hers when she was a kid. She survives. Barely. Because Taijun, tracking her phone like the paranoid control freak he is, shows up in time. And if you're thinking, okay, so he saves her, romance escalates, nope. The show uses the rescue as a pivot into something darker. Taijun takes her back to the mansion, locks the gates, and tells the staff, no one leaves. He doesn't say it like protection. He says it like captivity. Seolha screams at him for the first time, full voice, no politeness, and it's cathartic. She tells him, you think you're the only one with scars? I've been bleeding quietly my whole life. And Taijun just listens. The camera lingers on his face, and you see shame flicker. Not enough to redeem him. Enough to complicate him. Here's the rehook. The moment Taijun starts to trust Seolha is the exact moment Soyeon walks back into the story in person, ready to finish what she started. Soyeon returns to Seoul under a new name, a new haircut, and the kind of smile that belongs on a knife. She doesn't storm into the mansion. She haunts the edges first. A phone call to Chairwoman Khan. A meeting with Director Ma. A whisper to the tabloids. The drama shoots her like a horror reveal. Reflection in a car window. Silhouette behind frosted glass. The click of heels in an empty hallway. And when she finally faces Seolha again, it's in the hospital where their mother is being treated, which is such a cruel location choice because it's the only place Seolha ever felt competent. Soyeon corners her in the stairwell. Fluorescent lights, grey walls. No glamour, just raw threat. She grabs Seolha's chin and says, "You look good in my life. It would be a shame if you died wearing it." Seolha's voice shakes, but she doesn't fold. She says, "You can't erase me." And Eswon laughs, this bright, pretty laugh that echoes in that ugly stairwell like the world's worst ringtone, and replies, "I already did. Since birth." That line is evil, but the actress sells it with this calm certainty that made my skin crawl. Not overacted, not comic book, just someone who truly believes other people are optional. And in the background of all this, Chairwoman Khan starts making her own moves. Because she's not just a villain's mom, she's a villain in her own right. She never liked Eswon, not because Eswon was immoral, but because Eswon was uncontrollable. Chairwoman Khan values order above all. She values legacy. So when she senses Eswon is different, softer, more human, she decides that version might actually be useful, as long as she can bend it. She offers Seolha a deal she can't refuse. Sign a postnuptial agreement, give up claims to certain shares, and in exchange, her mother's treatment will be fully funded under a private wing. It's charity as blackmail. And Seolha, exhausted, signs again, because this drama understands that sometimes you don't lose by making the wrong choice. You lose because every choice available is designed to cost you something. We're only scratching the surface of the mid-series spiral, because once Aeon is back in play, the body count starts climbing in a way I genuinely didn't expect from what looked, on the poster, like a spicy melodrama. The show starts planting little visual motifs, mirrors, doubles, reflections, glass doors, so every scene feels like someone is watching someone else. Even when Seolha is alone, she's framed through something, a doorway, a window, a security monitor. Like the world refuses to let her be singular. And the music does this smart thing where Seolha's theme, piano, simple melody, almost lullaby, keeps getting invaded by Eswon's theme, which is all strings and sharp staccato notes. Sometimes they blend, and it's beautiful in a sick way, like the show is telling you, they're twins, they're bound, you don't get one without the other. The turning point that flips the entire drama into full-blown war is when Seolha finds the hidden safe in Eswon's old dressing room. It's behind a mirror panel, of course, because this drama has zero subtlety about its symbolism and somehow still makes it work. Inside, passports, burner phones, and a file labeled with one word, replacement. Seolha opens it, and her hands start shaking because it's not just financial crimes. It's medical records. Her medical records. A blood type match. A history of childhood illnesses. A note about anaphylaxis trigger confirmed. Eswon has been mapping out exactly how to kill her sister in a way that looks like fate or weakness. Seolha realizes, standing there in that closet that smells like expensive perfume and rot, that the swap wasn't an emergency. It was a scheduled execution. She slams the file shut, turns, and the mirror panel reflects someone standing behind her, Taejun, watching her with that same unreadable stillness. His voice is soft when he asks, "What did you find?" And Seolha, for the first time in the entire series, doesn't try to protect him with a lie. She looks at him and says, "A death plan. Mine." And the camera holds on Taejun's face as the meaning lands, as he connects the missing money, the staged scandals, the break failure, the way his wife's personality changed overnight. His jaw tightens. He doesn't explode. He does something scarier. He says, "Then we end her." And right there, with those 3 words, the drama crosses a line. Because now it isn't just Seolha trying to survive. It's Taejun choosing a side, finally. And that choice has consequences that start ripping through every relationship in the show. The next episode gives us one of the most cinematic mini-sequences I've seen in a melodrama thriller hybrid. Taejun takes Seolha to the old ambulance bay where she saved him late at night when the hospital is quiet except for distant intercom calls. The lights are dim. Rain taps on the metal awning like nervous fingers. He stands at the exact spot he almost died, and he says, I looked for you. And Seolha, stunned, says, Why didn't you find me? Tae-jun answers, Because I found her first. And the way he says her is loaded with disgust for Eson and disgust for himself. He kneels, this billionaire CEO, kneeling on wet concrete. And he bows his head, not romantically, but penitently. He says, Tell me what you need, and I'll do it. And Seolha's eyes fill, not because she's won, but because she's realizing how expensive redemption is going to be. She whispers, I need my mother alive. Tae-jun nods like that's easy. Then she adds, and I need you to stop treating me like a suspect. That one costs him. You can see it. He nods anyway. It's a stunning scene, and the direction earns it by not rushing it. No big swelling music at first. Just rain, breathing, the distant squeal of a gurney wheel somewhere inside. When the music finally comes in, it's subtle, almost apologetic. Like the show itself doesn't fully trust happiness. And because this is wrong sister in his bed, happiness lasts about 12 minutes. Esoyeon leaks evidence to the press that Esoyeon Khan has been embezzling funds, cheating on Tae-jun, and bribing doctors. Jun Seok gets orders from his superiors to bring her in. Chairwoman Khan sees the headlines and decides the cleanest solution is to cut off the infected limb, meaning Seolha. She orders the staff to restrict Seolha's movements. Hanyul gets dragged into it, used as emotional bait. And Tae-jun, caught between protecting Seolha and protecting the corporation, realizes he can't play defense anymore. So he sets a trap. He announces a renewal of vow ceremony. Public. Lavish. Media invited. A prove the marriage is fine spectacle. Everyone thinks it's a PR move. It's actually a hunting ground. And the episode ends with Seolha staring at her wedding dress in the dressing room, hands trembling, because she understands what Tae-jun is doing. And she understands something else too. Esoyeon will show up. Esoyeon will not let her walk down that aisle alive. Seolha lifts the veil, and the camera frames her face through the sheer fabric like she's already a ghost. And she whispers to herself, barely audible, I'm not dying for her. Then the door behind her clicks, slow and deliberate, and a voice, Eon's voice, says, You always did take what was mine. You always did take what was mine, Esoyeon says. And the way the actress lands that line is so controlled it's almost bored. Like jealousy isn't even the main flavor anymore. It's entitlement. Seolha turns slowly, veil still in her hands. And the camera gives us this brutal two-shot where they're standing in the same frame like a before and after photo. Same face, same height, but completely different temperature. Esoyeon is dressed as one of the stylists, head tucked under a cap, lanyard around her neck. Seolha is in the wedding dress, pale and trembling, but her eyes are finally sharpened by something other than fear. And the show does this deliciously nasty thing with the mirrors in that room. Every time Seolha shifts, you see Esoyeon multiply behind her in reflections, like there are 10 versions of the same predator. It's not subtle. It's also wildly effective, because the whole point is, Seolha can't escape her sister, not even visually. Esoyeon steps closer, lifts a hand, and gently adjusts a loose strand of hair near Seolha's ear like she's being affectionate. It's intimate in the most violating way. Then she whispers, You look like a bride. You'll die like one too. Seolha's breath catches, and the sound design amplifies it. This tiny inhale becomes loud in your ear, like the room itself is listening. Seolha says, Why are you doing this? And Esoyeon answers without blinking, Because you were never supposed to be alive long enough to ask. This is where the drama confirms what it's been implying since episode 1. Esoyeon didn't improvise her cruelty. She engineered it. She has been building this replacement plan since they were teenagers, since she realized the world only punished the poor twin for the rich twin's sins. Seolha finally understands she wasn't invited into luxury. She was drafted into sacrifice. Here's the hook that yanks you forward. Seolha's greatest weapon isn't money or power or Taijun's protection. It's the fact that she's the only one who's learned how to live inside a trap and still think clearly. Because Seolha doesn't scream. She doesn't lunge. She doesn't run. She does something smarter. She starts talking like a nurse. Calm voice, steady cadence, the same voice you use on a patient holding a scalpel they shouldn't be holding. She says, Seoyeon, put the scissors down. And yes, Seoyeon has scissors. Of course she does. The wardrobe department is right there. The threat was always going to be something ordinary turned lethal. Seoyeon smiles and taps the scissor blades against her palm like she's checking sharpness. Seolha keeps her gaze locked and says, if you kill me, you lose Taijun forever. Seoyeon's smile twitches, and that twitch is the first crack we've seen in her mask all season. It's a tight, tense little chess match, and the blocking is what makes it sing. Seoyeon stays between Seolha and the door, but she never rushes her. She savors the fear. Seolha shifts subtly toward the vanity, toward the phone. You can see her calculating distance and timing like she's measuring medication doses. And then Taijun's voice comes from outside the door, low, impatient. Seoyeon, we're starting. Seoyeon leans in close enough that her breath fogs Seolha's cheek and murmurs, he still calls you by my name. Then she slips out, smoothing her stylist disguise, leaving Seolha standing there with a veil in one hand and terror in the other. The vow renewal ceremony episode is where Rong's sister in his bed fully embraces its own absurdity and somehow turns it into spectacle. We're talking a glass pavilion built over a reflecting pool, white flowers everywhere, strings of lights that look like captured stars, a live orchestra playing a slowed-down version of the main theme like it's being strangled into romance. The camera floats through the venue in these elegant Steadicam shots that make it feel dreamy, but the color grading stays cold. Even the happy white is icy. It's like the show is saying, don't be fooled, this is a funeral dressed as a wedding. Taijun is in a black suit instead of white, which is a deliberate choice that reads like mourning. His jaw is tight, his eyes scanning the crowd the way someone scans a room for exits. He's not here to celebrate. He's here to catch a ghost. Seolha walks in on his arm, and the acting choice she makes here is so good I rewound it. She doesn't play confident now. She plays determined despite trembling. Her smile is small and slightly strained. Her shoulders are held up by pure will. She looks like a person who knows she might not make it out of the scene, but she's going to walk anyway because she refuses to die hiding. And then, in the crowd, you spot Seoyeon. Not as herself, not in the open. She's wearing a pale pink dress, hair styled differently, with a face mask like she's being cautious about privacy. But the camera finds her eyes, those sharp, amused eyes, and you feel the room get smaller. She's sitting beside Chairwoman Kang, of all people. That's the punchline and the gut pinch at the same time. The matriarch knows. She's letting it happen. This is one of those moments where I wanted to stand up and yell at the screen, which I did not do because I enjoy having neighbors who don't file complaints. But I did whisper, "Oh, you evil statue," at Chairwoman Kang. So that's where we're at emotionally. Here's the rehook. The assassination attempt at the ceremony isn't a knife or a gun. It's flowers. Earlier, in that save file, there was a note about anaphylaxis. Seolha has a severe allergy to lily pollen, something her family discovered when she was a kid, something Seoyeon knows intimately because she watched Seolha swell and wheeze and nearly die. And what does the ceremony have? White lilies. Everywhere. In the arch, in the centerpieces, in the bouquet handed to Seolha by a coordinator, who isn't a coordinator at all, he's director Marsman. The show builds the sequence with this creeping sensory horror. Seolha takes the bouquet. You see the pollen dusting her gloves like powdered sugar. The orchestra swells, and under it, the sound design threads in a faint ringing tone, like her body is already entering alarm mode. She inhales, smiles for cameras, and then her throat tightens. You watch her blink too fast, eyes starting to water. The actress nails the physicality. One hand subtly touching her neck, the other keeping the bouquet up like she's still performing wife. Taijun notices because he's watching her the way you watch someone you're trying to keep alive. He leans in, murmurs, "Are you okay?" Seol-ha tries to answer, but the words come out scratchy. The officiant starts talking about renewal and trust. And it's almost funny in a sick way because on screen, trust is literally trying to kill her. Seol-ha's lips turn slightly pale. Her chest starts rising too fast. The camera cuts to Esoon's eyes in the crowd, glittering with anticipation. Then it cuts to Chairwoman Khan's expression. Still, cold, evaluating. Not even surprised. Like she's watching an experiment. Taijun sees Seol-ha's fingers tremble and finally understands. He grabs the bouquet and drops it into the reflecting pool. Lilies float like corpses. The orchestra falters, and the sound drops into this sharp silence, punctuated by Seol-ha's wheezing. Taijun wraps an arm around her and says, loud enough for the front row to hear, "Call an ambulance." Now, and the guests start murmuring, cameras lifting, the PR nightmare blossoming in real time. This is where the directing goes full cinematic. The pavilion lights blur. The frame tightens into close-ups. Seol-ha's panicked eyes, Taijun's clenched jaw, Eon's smile fading as the plan doesn't go clean. Taijun pulls an EP pen from his pocket. Yes, he has one. Because after the car brake incident, he started carrying medical contingencies like weapons. That detail is so character consistent, it almost made me forgive him for the earlier captivity stuff. Almost. He jabs it into Seol-ha's thigh through the dress, and Seol-ha flinches, a small sound escaping her throat. She clutches his sleeve like she's anchoring herself to life. Taijun presses his forehead briefly against hers and whispers, "Stay with me." No big romance flourish. Just desperation. Just a man who finally found the person he's been searching for and is realizing how easily the world can take her. And then the ambulance arrives, and the scene turns into chaos. Guests filming, staff scrambling, the orchestra awkwardly stopping mid-note like the drama itself is embarrassed. It's messy, but that's why it works. It feels real in the way emergencies always feel real. Loud, humiliating, fast. Here's my surprising take. Hyeon doesn't look disappointed when Seol-ha survives. She looks irritated. Like the universe didn't follow her script. And that tells you everything about her psychology. This isn't about love. It's about authorship. Esoon wants to be the one who writes reality. At the hospital, Seol-ha's old territory becomes a battlefield. Nurses recognize her despite the socialite styling, because nurses always recognize their own, no matter what they're wearing. There's this small, beautiful moment where an older head nurse, Nurse Kim, sees Seol-ha wheeled in and whispers, "Seol-ha?" like she's seeing a ghost. Seol-ha's eyes flicker with relief and shame. Taijun barks orders, tries to throw money at the situation, and Nurse Kim snaps back, "Step aside. We do our jobs here." It's one of the only times someone tells Taijun no and means it, and the show frames it like a victory. Finally, a space where his power doesn't automatically win. But even here, Esoon's web reaches. Director Ma has bribed someone in the admin department to delay Seol-ha's mother's dialysis appointment. Seol-ha, still shaky from the allergic reaction, hears this and tries to get out of bed. Taijun catches her, and the two of them have this raw argument in a corridor that's half-lit by emergency lights because the drama loves a moody hallway. Seol-ha says, "You don't understand what it's like to beg for treatment." Taijun replies, "You don't understand what it's like to have everyone you love turned into a target." And Seol-ha fires back, "Then stop loving like a weapon." That line hit me. Because it's true. Taijun's love is protective, but it's also possessive. And Seol-ha refuses to accept protection that costs her autonomy. That's her arc in a nutshell. Learning to stop surviving quietly. Here's the rehook. The show doesn't resolve the twin problem by revealing the truth to the public. It resolves it by forcing Seolha and Eswon into the same room with Taijun and making him choose out loud. The twin reveal episode is staged like a courtroom drama even before it becomes one. Jun Seok, the prosecutor, obtains the foundation transfer documents and secures a warrant for Seoyeon's arrest. Taijun invites Jun Seok to the mansion under the guise of cooperation. But it's really because Taijun has his own evidence, security footage, the safe file, and, most damningly, a DNA test he secretly ordered after Hanyul confronted him with the simplest truth in the world. Dad, she's not her. Hanyul is the catalyst here. And I loved that the writers let the teenager be the moral compass without turning her into a preachy plot device. She sneaks into Eswon's old office, steals a hairbrush from the drawer, and hands it to Taijun like she's handing him a grenade. She says, "Stop pretending. I'm tired." The exhaustion in her voice is so real, it makes you want to hug her through the screen. Taijun takes the brush and just stares at it, like he's staring at the last thread holding his life together. The DNA test confirms what he already knows. The woman in his bed isn't his wife. And the one he married wasn't who he thought she was either. So Taijun sets a private confrontation in the mansion's glass atrium. The same atrium where Eswon used to throw charity brunches like they were coronations. He has both twins brought in. Seolha is shaking but upright. Eswon arrives poised, dressed impeccably, not even pretending to be anyone else now. Chairwoman Khan sits at the head of the room like a judge. Taijun places the DNA report on the table. He says, "I know who you are." Seoyeon smiles and says, "Do you?" Seolha's breath catches, because she realizes Eswon might still try to twist this to gaslight, to turn the story into something that makes Seolha the liar. And for a second, you wonder if it'll work, because Eswon has spent her life being believed. Then Taijun does something that stunned me. He doesn't accuse. He doesn't shout. He looks at Seoyeon and says, "Thank you." Eswon's smile falters. Seolha looks confused. Chairwoman Khan raises an eyebrow. Taijun continues, voice calm, lethal. "Thank you for showing me exactly how far you'll go. Now I know what to destroy." That's the kind of line that can be corny if delivered wrong. He delivers it like a verdict. And the camera stays wide, letting the glass atrium reflect everyone's faces back at them. Nobody gets to hide. Seoyeon laughs and says, "Destroy me? You wouldn't even be alive if I hadn't been there that night." And Seolha finally snaps. Not with a scream, with a statement. She says, "It was me. I saved you. I counted. I held your bleeding. I begged you to breathe." And her voice breaks on the last word. Taijun's eyes flick to her, and you see the grief in him. Grief for the years stolen, for the love misdirected, for the version of fate he was tricked into worshipping. Seoyeon claps slowly, mockingly, and says, "Look at you." Finally speaking. Then she turns to Chairwoman Kang and says, "Tell them. Tell them you chose this." And that's when we get the reveal that turns Chairwoman Kang from standard evil mother-in-law into something colder and more systemic. She did choose it. Years ago, when Taijun was vulnerable after the accident, Chairwoman Khan needed a marriage alliance to stabilize the company. She found Seoyeon through the social circuits, vetted her, and approved her because Seoyeon was controllable in the way that mattered. She was hungry. Chairwoman Khan didn't care if Seoyeon was kind. She cared if Seoyeon would play the role. When Seoyeon presented herself as Taijun's savior, Chairwoman Khan didn't investigate. She didn't want truth. She wanted a narrative that kept her son functional and her empire safe. So yes, Seoyeon is the active villain. But Chairwoman Khan is the architect. She's the one who built a world where someone like Seoyeon could thrive. There's a beat where Taijun turns to his mother and says, quietly, "You knew." Chairwoman Kang answers, "I knew what was necessary." Taijun's throat works like he's swallowing poison. Seolha looks like she's been slapped, not because she expected goodness from this woman, but because she realizes how little her life has mattered to the powerful. Here's the rehook. The confrontation doesn't end with an arrest. It ends with Esoon doing what she does best, turning intimacy into a weapon and forcing Seolha into a choice that feels impossible. Esoon reveals she has Seolha's mother, not kidnapped in a dramatic van way, kidnapped in a paperwork way. She used forged transfer orders to move their mother to a private facility under a shell company's name. She's safe, Esoon says, smiling, as long as you stop trying to take my life. Seolha's face drains of color. Taejun steps forward, furious, but Esoon lifts her phone and plays a live video feed of Seolha's mother asleep in a dim room, 4-drip blinking. It's real. It's happening. The show doesn't let you doubt it. Seolha whispers, please, not to Esoon, to the universe, to anyone. And this is where I have to praise the drama's refusal to make Seolha a passive victim in her own story. She doesn't collapse. She doesn't beg Esoon for mercy like a cliché. She turns to Taejun and says, don't do anything stupid. He says, I'm already stupid. I married her. And Seolha, despite everything, lets out this tiny, cracked laugh. It's the most human moment in the middle of a nightmare. Then she says, if you start a war, she'll kill my mom first. Taejun's eyes burn. Jun Seok steps in, tries to take control as the prosecutor, but he's outmatched because this isn't just law, it's family warfare. Esoon walks up to Seolha and offers her a deal. Return to being the quiet twin, take the embezzlement fall, go to prison, and their mother lives. Seolha looks at her sister and says, you really think I'm still that girl? Esoon replies, you are. You always will be. You don't know how to choose yourself. And Seolha's face changes. Something settles in her. She says, then I learn. It's a simple line, but the actress delivers it with this steadiness that made me genuinely emotional. Like, I felt my throat tighten. Because for Seolha, choosing herself isn't just a romantic empowerment arc. It's betrayal of the identity she's been forced to inhabit, caretaker, absorber, sacrifice. Seolha agrees to meet Esoon alone to exchange herself for her mother's location. Taejun refuses, obviously. They fight in the mansion hallway, and the camera follows them in a long take that feels claustrophobic because the walls are all glass and marble, no softness anywhere. Taejun grabs her wrist, that recurring motif, and Seolha finally pulls away and says, stop holding me like I'm yours. He freezes. That line lands like a slap, not because she's wrong, but because it's true. He's been trying to protect her by controlling her, and control is what almost killed her in the first place. So Taejun does something rare for a male lead in this genre. He lets her go. He says, voice rough, then let me walk beside you. Seolha nods, and they compromise. She will meet Esoon, but Taejun will be nearby, not as a captor, as backup. The meet happens at an unfinished coastal resort, one of Hanyul Group's abandoned projects, that Esoon chose specifically because it's symbolic. A skeleton of wealth. Exposed concrete. Wind howling through empty window frames. The cinematography here is gorgeous in a bleak way. Grey sky, churning sea, seagulls screaming like warning alarms. It feels like the edge of the world. Esoon arrives in a white coat that flaps like a cape, heels clicking on wet concrete. Seolha arrives in plain clothes, hair tied back, no disguise. She looks like herself for the first time in episodes, and that visual alone is satisfying. Like she's stepping out of the costume prison. Esoon says, you came. Seolha says, where's our mother? Esoon smiles and gestures toward the building. Inside. But you don't get her until you give me what I want. Seolha asks, what do you want? Seon answers, my husband. My life. My name. Seolha's eyes flicker with pain at the word husband. Because the show has been building this painful truth. Seolha does love Taejun. She hates that she loves him. She hates that the love came wrapped in another woman's lies. But she loves him anyway, because love is rarely polite. Seolha says, he's not yours. Not anymore. Esuon's face hardens. She pulls out a syringe. And this is where the drama goes full thriller. The syringe is filled with something clear, anaphylaxis trigger, sedative, who knows. Esuon says, I can make you disappear quietly. I can make it look like a reaction. A weak body. A tragic twin. Seolha takes a step back. Wine slams into them. The sea roars. Here's the rehook. The fight that follows isn't glamorous. It's desperate, ugly, and it proves exactly why Seolha was always the stronger twin, just not the louder one. Esuon lunges. Seolha grabs her wrist, mirroring Taijun's grip motif. But this time it's not possession, it's defense. They struggle, heels scraping, coat flapping, hair whipping into faces. The camera doesn't cut away. It stays close, shaky, making you feel every shove. Esuon hisses, You're ruining everything. And Seolha grunts, You ruined it first. Esuon swings the syringe. Seolha blocks, and the syringe skitters across the concrete, sliding toward a puddle. Esuon slaps Seolha hard enough that her head snaps sideways. Seolha staggers, tastes blood, and you see her expression shift, not into rage, but into clarity. She stops trying to win morally. She just tries to survive physically. Seolha shoves Esuon back, and Esuon stumbles near the edge where the concrete meets a drop into jagged rocks below. The wine screams. Esuon's eyes widen, not in fear of death, but in fear of losing control. She reaches into her coat pocket and pulls out a small remote. She clicks it. Inside the building, a muffled explosion thumps. Dust billows out of a broken window. Seolha's face goes white. Esuon smiles through the wind and says, Your mother was never here. That twist is cruel, and it's executed with such cold efficiency, it made my stomach drop. The show doesn't even give you time to process before Seolha bolts toward the building, heart pounding, and Esuon grabs her hair from behind, yanking her back. Seolha screams, not a melodramatic scream, a raw animal sound, and for a second I genuinely forgot I was watching a fictional drama. It felt too real, too primal. Then Taijun appears. He wasn't just nearby. He's been tracking Esuon's communications with his security team, and he storms into the scene like a man who's done being controlled by women who treat human lives as chess pieces. He grabs Esuon, pulls her away from Seolha, and Esuon laughs in his face, spits blood, and says, You chose the wrong twin. Taijun replies, I chose the one who was real. Esuon's laughter stops. And then Jun Seok's team arrives with police sirens in the distance, blue lights bouncing off wet concrete like bruises. Esuon looks at the approaching lights and does something so on-brand it's almost poetic. She tries to rewrite the narrative one last time. She throws herself backward, making it look like Taijun pushed her. She hits the ground hard, hair splayed, eyes wide, and screams, Help! He tried to kill me. It's manipulative genius because it weaponizes the public's love of a scandal. The cameras are there because Esuon tipped off a tabloid photographer. Of course she did. The show shows the photographer's lens catching the perfect frame. Taijun looming, Esuon on the ground, Seolha behind them in distress. A story gets born in a single click, and the next episodes explore the fallout. Taijun arrested for attempted murder, Hanyul Group stock crashing, Seolha demonized as the mistress twin, Jun Seok pressured by superiors to prosecute Taijun aggressively because taking down a chaebol makes careers. It's messy. It's political. It's exactly where the drama's themes sharpen. Because the biggest villain isn't just Esuon. It's the system that loves a convenient woman to blame. I'm going to throw in another personal confession here. I usually roll my eyes when dramas do media frenzy arcs because they're often lazy montages of flashing cameras. This one hurt. The montage is tight and ugly. Seolha's face on screens, commentators calling her a snake, strangers throwing drinks at her outside the hospital, her old colleagues whispering like their afraid association will infect them. The sound design is layered with overlapping voices, like you're trapped inside public judgment. I had to pause again, not because it was too intense visually, but because it's the kind of social cruelty that feels familiar in 2026. We've all seen how fast the internet picks a villain and refuses to let them be human. The show does something smart with Seolha's wardrobe during this arc. When she's being dragged through the public narrative, she's dressed down, neutral colors, hair unstyled. Not because she's fallen, but because she's finally refusing the costume. Eswon's clothes were always armor and bait. Seolha chooses plainness as rebellion. Meanwhile, Seoyeon plays victim beautifully. She appears in public with a neck brace she doesn't need, tearful interviews, whispery voice. The actress is terrifyingly good at this. She lets her eyes look glassy, but not puffy, like she's practiced crying in a mirror for years. And the show makes you watch people believe her, which is enraging but also the point. Performance is power. Here's the rehook. The drama's biggest twist isn't who ends up in Taejun's bed. It's who ends up holding the evidence that can free him and what they demand in exchange. That person is Chairwoman Kang. Taejun's arrest forces his mother to choose between her empire and her pride. She visits him in detention, sits across the glass, perfectly composed, and says, "You ruined everything for a nurse." Taejun, exhausted, replies, "No, you ruined everything for a company." Chairwoman Khan's eyes flash with something like pain, quickly buried. She tells him she can make this go away, that she can bury the photographer, silence the prosecutor's office, rewrite the narrative, because she's Chairwoman Kang, and she treats institutions like furniture. But there's a condition. Seolha must disappear. Leave the country. Never come back. Let Esoyeon keep the name. Let Taejun keep the company. Let the lie stand, because the lie is convenient. Taejun refuses. Not heroically, not with a speech. He just says, "No." And for the first time, you see Chairwoman Kang lose her composure by a millimeter. Her hand tightens on her purse. She says, "Then rot." And she leaves. Now Seolha is alone on the outside, trying to prove his innocence while keeping her mother alive and dodging Esoyeon's ongoing threats. And this is where Jun Seok becomes complicated. He offers to help Seolha, but not purely out of goodness. He wants Taejun out of the picture. He wants Seolha safe, yes, but he also wants her available. There's a scene where Jun Seok brings her food because she hasn't eaten, and he gently touches her hand and says, "If he goes to prison, you can finally be free." Seolha pulls her hand back and says, "Freedom isn't just the absence of one man." The look on Jun Seok's face is so telling, hurt, then quickly masked by professionalism. It's subtle, but it reveals his flaw. He's been romanticizing her suffering as a story where he gets to be the savior. And the drama doesn't paint him as a villain for that. It paints him as human, which is more uncomfortable. Seolha finds her mother by doing what she's always done, following the paperwork. She remembers the private facility transfer pattern from the Foundation's rehab center, cross-references shell company names from the safe file, and tracks a medical supply delivery route to a rural long-term care hospital owned by one of Hanyul's subsidiaries. It's such a nurse-coded detective arc, and I loved it because it doesn't suddenly turn her into an action hero. It turns her into a competent professional. Her intelligence isn't flashy, it's procedural. When Seolha finally enters the facility, the show shifts into this airy quiet. The halls are too clean. The nurses avoid eye contact. The lighting is warm but wrong, like a hotel pretending to be a hospital. Seolha hears her mother's cough from behind a door and her face breaks in relief. She pushes in and finds her mother sedated, restrained lightly at the wrists for safety. Seolha's voice shakes as she says, "Mom." Her mother's eyes flutter open, confused. She whispers Seolha's name, and Seolha starts crying silently, pressing her forehead to her mother's hand. It's a small scene, not a plot explosion, but it's one of the drama's most emotional payoffs because it's what Seolha has been fighting for since episode 1. Not Taejun, Not luxury. Her mother's warmth. Her mother's survival. And of course, the drama doesn't let that warmth last. Director Ma arrives with guards. He tells Seolha she's trespassing. Seolha stands between him and her mother's bed and says, voice steady, call the police. Director Ma smiles. We did. For you. He accuses her of breaking into a private medical facility, stealing controlled medications, assaulting staff, manufactured charges. Seolha realizes the system is about to swallow her. Then, unexpectedly, Hanyul shows up. The teenager barges in with a phone held up, live streaming. She says, Hi, I'm Khan Hanyul. This is my grandmother's company. This is where they hide patients. And the guards freeze because the modern age has one weakness even Chairwoman Kang respects: public exposure that can't be contained quickly. Hanyul, trembling but brave, narrates what she sees. She shows her grandmother's subsidiary name on the wall plaque. She shows Seolha's mother restrained. She says, voice cracking, they did this because my dad didn't listen. It's messy and impulsive, and exactly what a teenager would do when adults keep choosing silence. And it works. The live stream goes viral in minutes. Jun Seok sees it, rushes with official authority, and suddenly director Ma can't bully his way out. The facility director starts sweating. Nurses start whispering. The truth begins to leak through the cracks. Here's the rehook. Esoyeon's response to being cornered isn't to run. It's to burn everything down, including herself, if it means Seolha can't have a life. Esoyeon kidnaps Hanyul. Not in a random alley. Again, in a paperwork way. She uses her influence to pull Hanyul out of school under a fake guardian authorization, then takes her to the same unfinished coastal resort. It's a full-circle move. She texts Seolha a photo of Hanyul tied to a chair, face bruised, eyes blazing with hatred and fear. The message says, come alone. Or she dies. Taejun finds out from Seolha. And this is where his performance becomes heartbreaking. He doesn't rage first. He goes silent. His eyes go wet. He whispers, not her. And you realize, Taejun can survive losing money, reputation, freedom. He cannot survive losing his daughter. That's his one soft organ. Seolha insists on going because she can't let Hanyul die for her. Taejun insists on going because he can't let anyone go alone into Esoyeon's trap again. Jun Seok tries to coordinate police, but Esoyeon has rigged the area with signal blockers. The show turns the final stretch into this tense, stormy race to the coast, shot with fast cuts and shaky handheld. Vipers smearing rain across windshields like tears. At the resort, Esoyeon has staged the scene like theatre. Floodlights aimed at the central open space. Hanyul tied to a chair, gagged, eyes furious. Director Ma standing nearby, sweating. Esoyeon in a white dress again, because she loves being a ghost bride. The wind is violent. The sea is louder than dialogue sometimes, which is a bold sound choice that makes everything feel elemental, like nature itself is fed up with these people. Seolha arrives first, and Esoyeon claps slowly. She says, look, you finally came for something other than your mother. Seolha steps forward, hands raised, voice calm. Let her go. I'm here. Esoyeon says, not yet. I want him to see. Seolha's stomach drops because she knows who him is. Taejun arrives, soaked, eyes wild, and the moment he sees Hanyul, his face crumples. He takes a step forward, and Esoyeon points a gun at Hanyul's head. Yes, a gun. The drama has earned it by now. And the way it introduces the gun is smart. No flashy reveal. Just Esoyeon's hand lifting, metal catching light, Hanyul flinching. Esoyeon says, voice almost tender, you always loved her more than me. Taejun, voice breaking, says, she's my child. Esoyeon replies, and I was your wife. Taejun says, you were a lie. Esoyeon's eyes sharpen. Then love her truth. Watch what it costs. Seolha steps closer, trying to position herself between Seoyeon and Hanyul. Seoyeon laughs. You? The nurse? You think you can shield everyone? Seol-ha says, I've been shielding everyone my whole life. Seoyeon tilts her head. Exactly. It's your favorite role. And then Seoyeon offers the final deal. Seol-ha takes the blame publicly, confesses to everything, goes to prison, and Seoyeon will let Hanyul live and let Taejun go free. Taejun screams, No. Seol-ha looks at Hanyul, sees the fear behind the anger, and you can see the caretaker instinct surge in her like muscle memory. This is where the drama makes its most painful point. Seol-ha's instinct to sacrifice is both her beauty and her tragedy. But the show doesn't let her repeat the same cycle. She doesn't accept. She doesn't martyr herself. Instead, she does something that feels almost shocking because it's so simple. She tells the truth out loud to everyone, and she records it. She pulls out her phone, hits record, and says, loud over the wind, My name is Yoo Seol-ha. I am not you, Eson. I was forced to trade places. Eson stole my identity and used me as a scapegoat. She kidnapped my mother. She kidnapped Hanyul. She tried to kill me with my allergy. She turns the camera toward Seoyeon. Say it again. Say you were never going to let me survive. Seoyeon's face changes. Rage flashes. And then, this is the actress's best work. She composes herself and smiles at the camera. She says, sweetly, Of course you weren't going to survive. Someone had to pay for my mistakes. It's a confession. A real one. Not a clever half-truth. A full admission, delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who has never considered other people fully alive. The wind whips her hair across her face, and she doesn't even brush it away. She just stares into the lens like she's staring into a mirror, in love with her own villainy. And in that moment, you realize Esoon's fatal flaw. She believes she can control the narrative forever. She forgets that recordings are forever too. Director Ma tries to lunge for the phone. Taejun tackles him. They crash into a concrete pillar. It's not a stylish fight. It's heavy, clumsy, desperate. Taejun punches like a man who's never had to physically fight before but has been storing rage for years. Jun Seok, arriving with backup after managing to break through the signal block zone, shouts orders. Police lights flicker at the edge of the site. Everything becomes noise and movement. Seoyeon tightens her grip on the gun and screams, Stop. Everyone freezes. Hanyul whimpers behind the gag. Seol-ha steps forward slowly and says, Let her go. Take me. Seoyeon's eyes gleam. Finally. Here's the rehook. The gunshot you're expecting doesn't go where you think it will. Seoyeon fires, but not at Seol-ha. Not at Taejun. She shoots the chain, holding a heavy construction beam above them, because she planned this entire space as a death trap. The beam snaps loose, swinging down like a pendulum. Taejun shoves Seol-ha out of the way. The beam slams into the concrete where she was standing, shattering it. Dust erupts. The impact sound is huge, like the world cracking. In the chaos, Hanyul manages to tip her chair, falling sideways. Seol-ha crawls through dust and debris toward her, hands scraping on concrete, dress soaked and dirty. She rips the gag of Hanyul and whispers, I'm here. I'm here. Hanyul, sobbing, says, I hate her. Seol-ha replies, Me too. And then, softer, but we're going to live anyway. Taejun chases Eon as she runs toward the cliff edge, heels slipping, dress whipping like a flag. The camera follows them in a long tracking shot that feels breathless. The sea is right there, roaring, black and endless. Seoyeon turns at the edge, gun shaking in her hand now for the first time. Taejun stops a few feet away, chest heaving. He says, It's over. Seoyeon laughs, tears mixing with rain. Over? You think you get an ending? She points the gun at him. Say you love me. Say it. Or I jump. And here's where the drama does something that might divide viewers, but I actually loved it. Taejun doesn't say it. He doesn't lie to save her feelings. He says, clearly, I never loved you. I loved the woman you pretended to be. Seon's face shatters. For the first time, she looks like a child who has been told no. The gun lowers. Her lip trembles. And then her eyes harden again because vulnerability is intolerable to her. She steps backward, heel on the crumbling edge. Seolha, holding Hanyul behind her, sees what's happening and screams, "Stop." She runs toward them, but Junseo grabs her arm, holding her back because it's unsafe. Seolha fights him, crying, "She'll die." Junseok yells, "She made this." And that's the moral question the drama refuses to answer cleanly. Does Eseoyeon deserve saving? Does anyone, after all that? Seolha, because she's Seolha, still doesn't want death to be the ending. Not because Eseoyeon deserves mercy, but because Seolha doesn't want murder on her soul. There's a difference. Eseoyeon looks at Seolha, eyes blazing, and says, "You still want to save me. That's why you lose." Then she laughs one last time and lets herself fall. The fall is shot in a way that feels both melodramatic and horrifying. The camera doesn't linger on impact. It lingers on the empty space she leaves behind, on the dress fabric fluttering for a second like a white bird, then disappearing into the row. The orchestra theme doesn't swell here. Instead, the music drops out entirely, replaced by wind and sea, like the world doesn't even want to aestheticize her death. Taejun collapses to his knees at the cliff edge, not because he loved her, but because death is still death, and Troima doesn't care about deservedness. Seolha stands behind him, shaking, hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Hanyul cries silently, the kind of cry teenagers do when they're trying not to look weak. Junseok stares out at the sea, face grim, already thinking about legal consequences. And then, because this drama always has one more knife, director Ma escapes in the chaos. That's where I'm going to pause, because the next stretch is where the aftermath turns into a different kind of war entirely, and the show starts revealing what never meant to survive truly included, way beyond Eseon's personal cruelty, right down to how the entire Hanyul machine was designed to erase inconvenient people like Seolha. And the next scene opens with Seolha walking back into that mansion, not as a disguised wife, but as a woman holding a recording that could topple an empire. While Chairwoman Khan sits in the dark like she's been waiting for her all along. And when Seolha steps into that glass atrium, still smelling faintly of sea salt and concrete dust, the mansion doesn't feel like wealth anymore. It feels like a controlled environment. Like a lab. Chairwoman Khan doesn't stand to greet her. She doesn't have to. She's seated in a high-back chair with a single lamp casting a hard circle of light on the table in front of her, and everything outside that circle is shadow. The director frames it like an interrogation without needing bars, and Seolha, who has been physically hunted for episodes, suddenly has to survive something quieter, the kind of danger that wears pearls. Chairwoman Khan's first words aren't, "Are you okay?" They aren't, "Where is my son?" There, "Give me the phone." It's so blunt it almost makes you laugh, except nothing about her is funny. Seolha, trembling, keeps the phone in her fist like it's a heartbeat and says, "It's evidence." Chairwoman Khan tilts her head, the way someone examines a stain, and replies, "Evidence belongs to the powerful. The weak call it truth to make themselves feel brave." And that line right there is where Wrong Sister in his bed stops being just a twin thriller and turns into a story about class violence. Because Chairwoman Khan isn't threatened by Eseoyeon's cruelty. She's threatened by Seolha's proof. Cruelty can be managed. Proof is contagious. Here's the rehook. The show doesn't ask whether Seolha will expose the family. It asks whether she can expose them without getting erased first. Chairwoman Khan slides a folder across the table. Inside are documents Seolha didn't know existed. Her mother's insurance policy, the facility transfer forms, a criminal complaint already drafted with Seolha's name on it, and one photograph, grainy, from a hallway security camera, showing Seolha near the controlled meds cabinet at the rural facility. Chairwoman Khan says, matter of fact, I can make you a thief, a kidnapper, a fraud. I can make the public believe you killed your sister. Seolha's face tightens. She's not my sister, Chairwoman Khan corrects, and the cruelty of that correction is surgical. Not anymore. She fell. The sea took her. What remains is a narrative, and I decide what remains. Seolha tries to keep her voice steady and says, you watched her try to kill me. Chairwoman Khan's expression barely changes. I watched two women fight for a man. It was embarrassing. The show holds on Seolha's face as the insult lands. Not because Seolha cares about being called embarrassing, but because it reveals how Chairwoman Khan has been reducing this entire ordeal into something smaller to avoid accountability. If it's two women fighting, then the empire isn't implicated. If it's a jealous wife, then the corporation isn't corrupt. Minimization is how monsters sleep. And then Chairwoman Khan offers the same bargain she offered Taijun in the detention visit, only worse. Seolha disappears, the case disappears, Taijun is released, the mother's medical care is fully funded, and Hanyul's future remains clean. Seolha stares at the folder and realizes Chairwoman Khan is offering her comfort as a cage. It's the most dangerous kind of temptation because it's wrapped in the thing Seolha wants most, her mother alive. I loved how the actress playing Seolha handles this moment. She doesn't do a fiery empowerment speech. She does a slow inhale, eyes wet, and you can literally watch her decide what kind of person she's going to be for the rest of her life. She says, softly, if I accept, my mother lives. But I die anyway. Chairwoman Khan replies, you are a nurse. You people live for others. Seolha's voice firms. Not anymore. She turns and walks out with the phone, still in her hand. No dramatic music swell. Just the sound of her footsteps in that echoing mansion, each step like a sentence. Outside, the sky is still bruised from the storm, and Taijun is waiting by the gate with his security chief, Seo Deshik, a man who has been silently loyal in the background, but finally starts to look scared because even he can feel the walls closing in. Taijun's eyes go straight to Seolha's face. He asks, what did she say? Seolha answers, she asked for my silence. Taijun's jaw clenches. And you said no? Seolha nods. Taijun closes his eyes for half a second like he's absorbing a hit. Then he says, then we go to war. This is where I'll give the drama credit for a choice that could have gone macho and instead went mournful. Taijun doesn't look excited to go to war. He looks tired. He looks like a man who has spent his life being told conflict is business and now realizes conflict is blood. The show shoots him from slightly below. Yes, but not to glorify, more like to emphasize the weight he's carrying. His empire is literally built on controlling outcomes. And now, for the first time, he can't. Here's the rehook. The next move isn't a press conference. It's a hospital room. Seolha goes straight to her mother because she refuses to fight a war without grounding herself in the reason she's fighting. Her mother, Yumija, wakes groggy, still weak from sedation, and when she sees Seolha she whispers, Soyeon? That one word is a knife. Seolha flinches. Taijun stands behind her, silent, and Hanyul, who arrived with Jun Seok after the coastal nightmare, hovers in the doorway like she doesn't know where she belongs. Seolha takes her mother's hand and says, voice cracking, Mom, it's me. Seolha. Her mother stares, confused, then starts crying because confusion plus relief equals tears in a sick parent who's been moved around like luggage. She whispers, why do you look like her? And Seolha, for the first time, answers honestly, because she needed me to disappear. This hospital scene could have been melodrama, but the director keeps it small. No swelling strings, just fluorescent hum, 4 drip clicks, the faint sound of a distant baby crying from another ward, because life keeps happening even during tragedy. Seolha's mother cups Seolha's cheek with a trembling hand and says, you are always the one who stayed. And Seolha breaks. Not pretty crying, ugly, shoulder-shaking crying. Taijun turns away. swallowing emotion like he's choking on it. Hanyul wipes her own tears angrily like she refuses to be seen as soft. It's one of the rawest family scenes in the show, and it matters because it pulls the story away from who gets the man and back to who gets to live. Then Jun Seok arrives with news that changes the game. The recording Seol-ha captured at the resort is admissible, but only if they can verify chain of custody and protect it from being challenged as coerced, which is legal speak for Chairwoman Khan will rip this apart in court if you're sloppy. Jun Seok offers to submit it through official channels. Taijun doesn't trust him, and honestly, neither did I at that point. Not because Jun Seok is corrupt, but because he's ambitious and emotionally compromised. He wants to be the hero in Seol-ha's story, and heroes sometimes make selfish choices when their ego gets involved. And the show actually plays with that discomfort. There's a scene where Jun Seok asks Seol-ha to hand him the phone for safekeeping, and the camera lingers on his hand reaching. Seol-ha hesitates just long enough that you feel the mistrust. Taijun notices the hesitation and looks like he wants to tear the prosecutor apart. Seol-ha finally says, "No, I'll upload it myself." Jun Seok's expression tightens, again, just for a second, and he says, "That's reckless." Seol-ha replies, "So is trusting any of you." That line made me exhale. Because yes, Seol-ha has been surrounded by powerful people insisting they know what's best for her. Her refusal to hand over the phone isn't paranoia. It's growth. Here's the rehook. The most suspenseful sequence in the back half isn't a chase. It's Seol-ha trying to get Wi-Fi. I'm dead serious. The show turns digital survival into physical tension. Seol-ha goes to an internet cafe near the hospital. Hood up, mask on, hands shaking as she logs into a cloud drive. The lighting is neon and grimy, a complete contrast to the mansion's sterile elegance. You hear keyboard clacks, game sounds, teenagers yelling at screens. In that chaos, Seol-ha tries to upload the video confession. The progress bar crawls. 10%, 15, 20, and then her phone gets a call from an unknown number. She ignores it. The call comes again. She ignores it. Then the lights flicker. The cafe owner shouts something about a power issue. The editing starts cutting faster. Seol-ha's eyes darting, the upload bar, a man in the corner turning his head, the cafe door opening, a shadow entering. The score is minimal, just this thin high note like a nerve being plucked. Seol-ha's upload hits 40%, 50%, and then the internet drops. The cafe owner slaps the router. Nothing. Seol-ha's breath quickens. She tries hotspot. No signal. Signal blockers. Director Ma. Of course. Seol-ha stands up, heart pounding, and the man in the corner stands too. He's wearing a cap, face partially hidden. He walks toward her, and the camera goes tight on Seol-ha's face as she realizes they found her. Not through magic, through systems, through surveillance and corruption, and the fact that she's never been allowed privacy in her own life. She runs. The cafe door slams open, bells ringing, cold air hitting her face. The street is wet, cars splashing. She ducks into an alley, clutching the phone. Footsteps follow. The chase is short handheld, jittery, with motion blur that makes the world feel like it's slipping. Seol-ha stumbles, catches herself on a brick wall, and for a second you think she's trapped. Then Nurse Kim, the head nurse from earlier, appears. It's such a satisfying twist because it's not a random savior. It's community. Nurse Kim, still in scrubs, steps into the alley holding a heavy umbrella like a weapon and says, "Hey, you lost?" The hired man hesitates because even criminals have a weird hesitation around confident older women. Nurse Kim points the umbrella at him and says, "Go away before I make you regret your mother's womb." I laughed. I genuinely laughed out loud. It's the kind of line that sounds ridiculous on paper and becomes iconic because she delivers it like a threat she's used before on drunk patients. The man backs off, and Nurse Kim grabs Seol-ha's arm and drags her into the hospital through a side entrance. She leads her to a supply closet, the same kind of closet where Seolha used to change between identities, and locks the door. Seolha, shaking, says, "Why are you helping me?" Nurse Kim replies, "Because you're one of ours. And because I'm tired of rich people treating hospitals like their private trash cans." That's another theme the show nails: hospitals as battlegrounds between care and profit. Nurses as the last line of humanity in a world that monetizes survival. Here's the rehook. The upload succeeds, but the real danger begins after the truth goes public. Nurse Kim connects Seolha to the hospital's secure network, and Seolha uploads the confession to multiple cloud accounts, then schedules it to auto-send to reporters if her phone goes offline. Smart. Practical. Nurse brain mixed with trauma brain. The moment the upload hits 100%, Seolha exhales, like she's been holding her breath since episode 1. Then her phone starts buzzing non-stop. News alerts, DMs, calls. The world catching fire. The confession video spreads across social media like gasoline, and the show depicts it with this dizzying montage: Esoyeon's face on screens, her voice admitting Seolha was meant to die, commentators scrambling, hashtags forming, a morning show anchor saying, "This could be the scandal of the decade." The sound is a cacophony, overlapping voices, notification pings, the low rumble of public outrage. And the drama doesn't pretend the internet is pure justice. Some people believe Seolha immediately. Others call it deepfake. Others blame her anyway because misogyny is efficient like that. There are shots of anonymous comments on screen, cruel in that casually violent way. Poor twin trying to steal rich twin's life. She seduced him. Both sisters are trash. Seolha reads them, and you can see each one hit like a pebble in a bruise. Taejun watches the video in a private hospital room, alone, and his reaction is one of the best pieces of acting in the whole series. He doesn't cry. He goes still. He replays the part where Esoyeon says, "Of course you weren't going to survive," and his throat works like he's swallowing bile. Then he stands, walks to the window, and you see his reflection layered over the city. For a man who has lived inside reflection and illusion, this is the first time he's forced to stare at reality without being able to buy a different one. Chairwoman Khan's response is immediate and terrifyingly realistic. She calls it misinformation. She calls it a private family matter being exploited by criminals. She mobilizes her PR team. She threatens lawsuits. She turns the machine on, and the machine turns on Seolha. Seolha is charged with fraud for impersonation, charged with defamation, and, most insidiously, accused of manipulating Taejun while he was mentally unstable. The drama makes a point. Even when a woman tells the truth, the system finds a way to reframe her as either crazy or calculating. Sometimes both. Jun Seok tries to help, but he's now caught in a conflict of interest because his superiors want him off the case. Taking down Chairwoman Khan would destabilize too many political alliances. The prosecutor's office is shown as a glossy building full of men in suits who talk about public interest while making private deals. Jun Seok's mentor, Chief Prosecutor Ha, tells him, "Be smart. Don't burn your future for a nurse." Jun Seok clenches his jaw and says, "She's not just a nurse. She's a victim." Chifa replies, "Victims don't fund campaigns." That exchange is so bleak it almost feels like a punchline, and I mean that as praise. The show doesn't flatter institutions. It exposes them as just another mansion with different furniture. Here's the rehook. The drama's most satisfying reversal isn't Taejun rescuing Seolha. It's Seolha rescuing herself in court. The courtroom arc is long, and in lesser hands it would drag. But Rong's sister in his bed keeps it tense by treating the court like another stage where identity can be weaponized. Seolha is put on the stand as Yoo Esoyeon because legally, that's the name she's been living under for months. The judge addresses her as Mrs. Kang. The defense lawyer, hired by Chairwoman Kang, smirks and says, "You enjoyed the luxury, didn't you?" The question is designed to shame her. Seolha answers, calm, I enjoyed not being hungry for the first time in my life. The courtroom murmurs. It's such an honest answer, it disarms the performance around her. She continues, but enjoying comfort doesn't make coercion disappear. It doesn't make attempted murder romantic. It doesn't make me less human. The actress delivers this testimony with a restrained fury that I adored because it refuses melodrama. Seolha isn't begging the court to like her. She's stating reality. And the show intercuts her testimony with flashbacks. Not glossy romantic flashbacks, but small humiliations. Seolha signing the illegal transfer while thinking of her mother's dialysis. Seolha wiping lipstick off in the supply room. Seolha choking on lily pollen while cameras filmed her as the perfect wife. It's a montage of survival, not love, and it reframes the entire first half of the drama in a harsher light. Tae-joon testifies too, and his testimony is where his arc finally pays. He admits, publicly, that he suspected she wasn't Esoyeon early on and still kept her in the mansion. He says, I thought control was protection. I was wrong. Chairwoman Khan's eyes burn holes into him from the gallery. Tae-joon doesn't look at her. He looks at Seolha and says, I'm sorry. Not a grand apology with violence. Just words, spoken in a room that profits from shame. And Seolha doesn't forgive him instantly. Thank God. She just nods once, like she accepts the apology as a fact, not as a magic eraser. Then comes the bombshell evidence. Hanyul takes the stand. Hanyul's testimony is messy, emotional, teenage. She blurts things out in the wrong order. She gets angry. She cries. And it's the most believable testimony in the show because it's not polished. She says, my dad was miserable. Esoyeon hated me. She used to pinch my arm when no one could see. Seolha made me ramen at night and didn't tell the staff, so I wouldn't get in trouble. She sat outside my room when I had nightmares. She's not the villain. Her voice cracks on the last sentence. The judge tries to maintain order. Chairwoman Khan's lawyer objects. The judge wants Hanyul to stick to facts. Hanyul snaps, these are facts. You just don't like them because they're ugly. I wanted to stand and clap. Again, I didn't, because neighbors, but spiritually, standing ovation. Here's the rehook. Just when the court starts leaning towards Seolha, the drama pulls its cruelest trick. Esoyeon comes back. They find a body. A woman washes up on the coast, face damaged, wearing a shredded white dress. The news reports it as Esoyeon. The public mourns. Chairwoman Khan's PR team pounces. Our family has suffered a tragic loss. Sympathy floods in. The prosecution's tone shifts. Suddenly Seolha isn't just a victim. She's a survivor who exploited a tragedy. The narrative flips because grief is a powerful mask. Seolha watches the news report from a hospital waiting room, hands numb, and she whispers, that's not her. Tae-joon looks at the screen, eyes narrowing, and says, it's too convenient. Jun Seok, reading the forensic summary, says, the dental records match. Seolha's stomach drops, because dental records are hard to fake. Unless you have money, access, and a doctor willing to commit a felony. And then the show reveals something that made me audibly go, oh, come on. But in the good way, the way you groan when a thriller is being extra and you're still seated for it. The body isn't Esoyeon. It's a woman named Min Jivan, a former Hanyul hospital patient advocate who went missing months earlier after trying to expose illegal clinical trials run through the foundation. Her dental records were swapped in the database. Her identity was erased. Her death was used as a prop. In other words, the twin swap was never just about romance. It was connected to a larger network of corruption that kills inconvenient people and relabels the corpses. This is where never meant to survive expands from personal vendetta to institutional design. Esoyeon didn't invent the idea of replacements. Hanyul Group did. People disappear, records change, narratives get rewritten. Esoyeon was simply talented enough to ride that machinery. Director Ma, remember, is still loose. And when he realizes Seolha's video is toppling the illusion, he starts destroying evidence physically. He sets fire to an archive room at Hanyul University Hospital. Yes, Seolha's home turf, where patient trial records are stored. The fire sequence is one of the most visually striking in the series. Red-orange flame licking sterile white walls, sprinkler water turning ash into grey sludge, alarms wailing over the soundtrack like a siren song. Seolha runs into the smoke with Nurse Kim and a couple of other staff, not as a hero stunt, but because those records include real patient names, people who deserve truth even if truth ruins the powerful. And this is the vivid mini-scene retelling that stayed in my head for days. Seolha in that burning archive room, smoke curling around her hair, eyes watering, mask on, dragging a metal file cabinet across the floor while sprinklers rain down like cold punishment. Papers float in the air like dying birds. She hears a cough behind her and turns to see an intern collapsed. Without hesitation, she drops the cabinet, runs, hauls the intern up, and half-carries him toward the exit, her shoes slipping on wet ash. As she stumbles out into the hallway, firelight flickers behind her, and for a second her face is lit like a ghost bride again. But this time, she isn't dressed in silk. She's dressed in scrubs. The show visually ties her identities together. Wife costume versus nurse truth. She was always herself in the moments that mattered most. Outside, Tae-jun is there, because he started showing up to places without being asked, not to control, but to witness. He sees her emerge from smoke and grabs her shoulders, checking her like he's afraid she'll vanish. Seolha shoves him lightly and coughs. Help them, not me. Tae-jun turns and starts directing emergency crews, using his authority for something that isn't corporate damage control for once. It's a small redemption, not a full one, but it counts. Here's the rehook. The fire doesn't just destroy records. It reveals who's been pulling the strings behind Director Ma. In the ashes of the archive room, Seolha finds something Director Ma didn't have time to burn completely. A half-melted binder labeled Project Lucid, containing trial consent forms with forged signatures, and one name repeated in internal memos, Chairwoman Khan Hyang. Not as an overseer, as an initiator. She didn't just tolerate corruption. She commissioned it, using the foundation's rehab centers and rural facilities as trial sites for a cognitive enhancement drug meant to keep executives functional under stress. The irony is brutal. A drug designed to optimize the powerful, tested on the powerless. And the drug had side effects, psychosis, cardiac events, deaths. Min Jeevan, the woman whose body was used as Esoon's, was one of the advocates who tried to expose it. Esoon learned about Project Lucid and used it as leverage. She threatened to reveal it if Chairwoman Khan didn't protect her. That's why Chairwoman Khan tolerated Esoon's chaos for so long. Esoon wasn't just a daughter-in-law. She was a blackmailer holding a match. So now, with Aeon dead and Director Ma running, Chairwoman Khan is cornered. And cornered animals don't become kinder. They become decisive. Chairwoman Khan orders Tae-jun declared mentally unfit through a board vote, using the scandal and his detention history as justification. She tries to strip him of CEO status, not because she cares about the company's health, but because she needs control of the narrative again. Tae-jun fights back with shareholder allies he never realized he had. People who were tired of his mother's iron grip. There's a boardroom episode that's basically a verbal knife fight, shot with sharp overhead angles that make the table look like an operating table. Chairwoman Khan sits at the head like a surgeon. Tae-jun sits opposite like a patient refusing anesthesia. He says, "You used my marriage as a business merger." She replies, "And it saved you." He says, "It destroyed me." She answers, "You were always weak." And Tae-jun, voice steady, replies, "No, I was trained to obey." That line is important because it frames Tae-jun not as a naturally cold man, but as someone shaped by authoritarian parenting and corporate expectations. It doesn't excuse his cruelty to Seolha, but it contextualizes why he reached for control when scared. He was raised in a house where love was leverage. Seolha, meanwhile, is facing her own legal storm. The court can now see she was coerced, but impersonation is still a crime, and the drama doesn't magically erase that. Instead, it does something rarer. It makes consequences part of growth. Seolha accepts probation and community service, returning to nursing under supervision. She doesn't whine about it being unfair. She says, "If I broke the law to survive, I still broke the law. But I won't let them pretend the system didn't break me first." That's the show's moral maturity at its best, accountability without false equivalence. And the romance, this is where some viewers might get impatient because the drama refuses to give us fluffy payoff quickly. Tae-jun wants to be close to Seolha, but Seolha keeps distance. She visits him at the company, yes. She texts him, sometimes. But she also tells him, "I can't be your refuge while I'm still learning to be my own." Tae-jun takes it badly at first. He's used to people orbiting him. But then he starts doing something different. He stops demanding. He starts offering. There's a scene I loved where Tae-jun shows up at the hospital cafeteria with 2 bowls of seaweed soup, the kind Koreans eat for birthdays and recovery, and he sits across from Seolha like a student waiting for permission. He says, awkwardly, "I asked Nurse Kim what you eat when you're exhausted." Seolha looks at him, unimpressed, and says, "You could have just asked me." Tae-jun replies, "I didn't want you to think I was buying you." Seolha pauses, and you can see her almost smile. She says, "You still are. Just with soup." Tae-jun's mouth twitches. It's the smallest humor, but it feels like oxygen in a series that's been suffocating us for hours. Here's the rehook. Right when it feels like the story is stabilizing, director Ma makes his last move. He goes after Seolha's mother again, because he understands exactly what Seolha will trade her life for. Director Ma breaks into the hospital's private wing at night, disguised as a maintenance worker, and tries to inject Seolha's mother with an air embolism, quick, quiet, natural complication. It's horrifying, and the show shoots it like a horror film. Dim corridor, fluorescent lights flickering, the squeak of a cartwheel, the faint beep of monitors like a countdown. Seolha, on a late shift, notices a chart discrepancy. Her mother's medication order suddenly changed. That's her nurse instinct saving her family again. She rushes toward the room, hears a muffled struggle, and bursts in to find director Ma leaning over the bed with a syringe. The confrontation is fast. Seolha screams. Director Ma lunges. Seolha grabs his wrist. Again, that wrist grab motive. But now it's life or death, and slams his hand against the bed rail. The syringe clatters. Director Ma shoves her into the wall. Her head hits, stars bursting in her vision. But she doesn't go down. She kicks the cart into him, grabs a metal four-pole, and swings. It's messy, frantic, not choreographed like an action scene. It looks like what it would actually look like when a nurse fights for her mother's life in a hospital room at 2 a.m. Nurse Kim hears the commotion, charges in with to security guards. Director Ma tries to run, but Tae-jun appears at the door like a shadow made solid, because he's been sleeping in his car outside the hospital ever since the livestream scandal, refusing to leave Seolha unprotected. He tackles Director Ma to the floor. Director Ma spits, "You can't stop it. It's bigger than you." Tae-jun pins him and says, voice low, "Then I'll burn it down." Director Ma is arrested. Finally. And you get that satisfying shot of him being walked down the hallway in handcuffs. But the show doesn't let it feel triumphant for long, because as he's being dragged away, he looks at Seolha and smiles. He says, "She's alive." Seolha freezes. Tae-jun's eyes widen. Nurse Kim mutters, "Who?" Director Ma laughs through blood in his mouth. "Your sister." The sea doesn't take what it's paid to return. That line is such pure soap thriller excess. And yet the show earns it because it's been planting the missing body, swapped records, identity erasure mechanics for so long. Seolha's knees go weak. She grips the bed rail. Taijun's face hardens into something like dread. Esoon survived the fall because she planned to. Director Ma had a boat waiting below the cliff, timed to the second. The death was staged with Min Jivan's body. Esoon didn't jump as defeat. She jumped as escape. And now she's coming back. Not for love, not for Taijun, but for revenge and control, because Seolha's truth stole her authorship. That's where the second half's final arc ignites, and the tone shifts again into something almost gothic. Esoon reappears in Seoul with a scar along her shoulder from the fall, hair cut blunt, eyes even colder, like surviving death scraped the last bit of humanity off her. She doesn't go public. She goes private. She starts killing loose ends. A witness in the Project Lucid trial files is found dead. A lab technician disappears. Chief Prosecutor has suddenly announces early retirement and leaves the country. Jun Seok receives anonymous photos of his apartment, proving someone's been inside. The show uses these little dread beats: door locks turning, footsteps behind you, shadows in glass, to make Esoon feel like a virus more than a person. And here's the part that surprised me emotionally. When Seolha hears Esoon is alive, she doesn't just feel fear. She feels grief. Because part of her, deep down, wanted Esoon's death to be an ending. Not because she wanted her sister dead, but because she wanted the story to stop. She wanted to rest. The actress conveys that exhaustion so well, her face doesn't contort. It just empties. Taijun insists on putting Seolha and her mother under private protection. Seolha refuses to go back to the mansion. She says, "That house is where I almost died." Taiju nods and buys a small apartment near the hospital under Seolha's name, not his, as a gesture of giving her control. It's one of the few billionaire gestures in the show that doesn't feel like ownership, because Seolha signs the contract herself, reads every page, and tells him, "If there are clause that makes you my landlord, I'll set it on fire." Taijun replies, deadpan, "Noted." The show lets him be lightly funny here, and it's needed, because the tension is about to ramp up into the final stretch where Esoon tries to force a last twin swap, this time not with clothes, but with blood. And that's the next scene. Seolha receives a package at the hospital. No return address. Inside is a vial of blood and a note that reads, "Let's see whose body they bury next."